"Mommy, I'm so hungry," cried the child. When a billionaire CEO heard those words, he didn't just buy them dinner, he bought them a mansion. But as secrets, scandals, and heartbreak explode, one question remains: will this gift save their lives or destroy them forever? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The rain fell in cold, steady sheets across the crumbling sidewalks of East Pine District. Mariah Carter pulled her thin jacket tighter, more concerned with keeping her 8-year-old daughter Lily dry than herself. The streetlights cast weak yellow circles on the wet pavement, barely illuminating their path home. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the food pantry volunteer had said, genuine regret in his voice. "We're completely out for today. Maybe try again next week?" Next week felt like an eternity. Mariah's stomach clenched as she thought of their empty kitchen cabinets. The last of their food had been Lily's breakfast that morning, a single slice of bread with a scraping of peanut butter. "Come on, sweetheart," Mariah said, tugging Lily's small hand. "Let's get home before we're soaked through." Lily stumbled along beside her mother, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles. Her usually bouncy curls hung limp and damp around her face. "But Mommy, my tummy hurts," she whimpered. "We haven't had dinner in so long." Each word felt like a knife in Mariah's heart. She'd lost her waitressing job 2 weeks ago when the diner closed suddenly. The envelope of unpaid bills in their apartment grew thicker by the day. Yesterday's eviction notice felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. "I know, baby," Mariah whispered, fighting back tears. "I'm trying my best." They passed the shuttered windows of what used to be Mike's Market, then the boarded-up hardware store. The neighborhood had been dying slowly for years, but lately it felt like the decay was speeding up. Even the rats seemed to have abandoned them. At the corner of 4th and Pine, they waited for the light to change. The rain drummed against metal and pavement, creating a symphony of urban despair. A sleek black car pulled up to the red light, its engine purring quietly. Through the misty air, Mariah could make out its elegant lines. A Bentley, she thought, though she'd only ever seen such cars in magazines. Lily's small voice cracked through the night air, quiet but clear. "Mommy, I'm so hungry." The words hung in the damp air, and Mariah noticed movement in the Bentley. The driver's window was partially down, and for just a moment she caught the gaze of the man inside. Even through the rain and darkness, she could see his sharp features and expensive suit, their eyes locked for a heartbeat. Ethan Walker sat frozen behind his steering wheel, his hand still resting on the window control. He'd been leaving the Children's Hospital Foundation Gala, where he'd just pledged $5 million to their new cancer wing. The Crystal Recognition Award sat on his passenger seat, catching the dim light from passing street lamps. But now, that self-satisfied feeling from the gala evaporated like mist. The little girl's words echoed in his head, bringing back memories he'd tried so hard to bury. His late wife Catherine's voice whispered from the past. "You don't understand what it's like, Ethan, to be truly hungry, to feel so helpless." The light turned green. Mariah pulled Lily forward, their shadows stretching and shrinking as they passed under each streetlight. Ethan's foot hovered over the gas pedal, but he couldn't make himself press it. Instead, he flicked on his turn signal and pulled over to the curb. His driver's door opened, letting in the sound of rain and distant traffic. The elegant Italian leather shoes he'd put on for the gala splashed into a puddle, but he barely noticed. He took a few steps forward, watching the mother and daughter make their way down the dark street. The woman's shoulders were hunched against more than just the rain, and the little girl's feet dragged with exhaustion. Their clothes were clean but worn, the kind of worn that spoke of careful washing and mending, of making things last because there was no choice. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd written checks for millions tonight, had shaken hands with wealthy donors and accepted their praise. But here, just blocks from that glittering ballroom, a child was going to bed hungry. Catherine would have known exactly what to do. She'd grown up in a neighborhood just like this, had known the sting of empty cupboards and the shame of asking for help. Before her death, she'd made him promise to never forget about the people society overlooked. He took another step forward, his expensive suit growing damp in the rain. The mother and daughter were getting further away, about to turn a corner into even darker streets. Ethan's heart pounded as he quickened his pace to follow them. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do or say, but he knew he couldn't let them disappear into the night. The sound of his footsteps must have carried, because the woman, Mariah, suddenly glanced back. Her expression shifted from fear to wariness as she took in his expensive clothes and the Bentley still idling at the curb. She pulled her daughter closer, protective instincts clearly warring with exhaustion. "Wait," Ethan called out, his voice softer than he'd intended. "Please." The sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, its engine purring quietly in the rain. Ethan Walker stepped out, his expensive tuxedo instantly dampening in the downpour. His polished shoes splashed through puddles as he approached the mother and daughter huddled beneath a flickering streetlight. Mariah instinctively drew Lily closer, her arm tightening protectively around her daughter's thin shoulders. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion at the well-dressed stranger emerging from the shadows. "Please," Ethan said, keeping his distance. "I couldn't help but overhear." He gestured to a small diner across the street, its neon "open" sign reflecting off the wet pavement. "Let me buy you both dinner." "We don't need charity," Mariah replied sharply, though her voice wavered. She tried to walk past him, but Lily's small hand tugged at her jacket. "Mommy," Lily whispered, her big brown eyes filled with tears. The child's stomach growled audibly, making her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Ethan remained where he stood, rain dripping from his dark hair. "It's not charity," he said softly. "Sometimes people just want to help." He pulled out his wallet and showed his ID. "I'm Ethan Walker. You can look me up if you'd like. I'm simply offering a warm meal on a cold night." Mariah hesitated, looking down at Lily's hopeful face. Her daughter's clothes were damp, her shoes worn through. Pride warred with maternal instinct as another raindrop fell on Lily's cheek, mixing with an escaped tear. "Please, Mommy?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Mariah's shoulders sagged slightly. "Just dinner," she said firmly, meeting Ethan's eyes. "Nothing else." The bell above the diner door chimed as they entered. Warm air and the smell of coffee enveloped them. A tired-looking waitress led them to a worn red vinyl booth, handing out laminated menus. "Order whatever you'd like," Ethan said, settling into the opposite side of the booth. He noticed how Mariah's eyes went straight to the prices, her forehead creasing with worry. "Can I have pancakes?" Lily asked, her voice timid but hopeful. "With strawberries?" "Of course you can, sweetie," the waitress said with a kind smile, pulling out her notepad. Mariah ordered a simple sandwich, though Ethan could see her eyeing the hot dinner specials. "Please," he said quietly. "Get what you really want. I insist." She flushed, but changed her order to the meatloaf dinner. As they waited for their food, Ethan observed how Mariah kept one arm around Lily, as if afraid her daughter might disappear. Despite their obvious hardship, both mother and daughter's clothes were clean, if worn. Mariah's hands showed the rough signs of hard work. When the food arrived, Lily's eyes widened at the stack of pancakes topped with bright red strawberries. She looked to her mother for permission before picking up her fork with trembling fingers. "Go ahead, baby," Mariah whispered, smoothing Lily's hair. They ate in relative silence, broken only by Lily's occasional happy hums. Ethan noticed how Mariah made sure Lily ate first, taking small bites of her own meal, as if to make it last. After they finished, while Lily was distracted by the last strawberry on her plate, Ethan quietly spoke to Mariah. "There's a motel just down the block. Clean, safe. Let me get you a room for tonight, out of this weather." "Mr. Walker," Mariah began, her pride rising again. "Please," he interrupted gently. "It's just one night. For Lily." Mariah looked at her daughter, who was fighting to keep her eyes open, exhaustion finally winning over hunger. After a long moment, she nodded slightly. Ethan stepped away to speak with the waitress, paying their bill and making a quick phone call. When he returned, he handed Mariah a room key with the motel's address written on the envelope. "It's paid for," he said, stopping her protest before it could start. "The room has 2 beds and a hot shower. Please use it." Mariah stared at the key in her hand, tears threatening to spill. "Why?" she whispered. "Because everyone deserves a warm meal and a safe place to sleep," Ethan replied simply. He stood, nodding politely. "Good night, Mrs. Carter. Good night, Lily." "Night, mister," Lily mumbled sleepily, leaning against her mother. Mariah watched through the diner window as Ethan disappeared into his car and drove away. She clutched the motel key tightly, overwhelmed by this unexpected act of kindness from a stranger. The weight of the key in her hand felt both foreign and like a lifeline she hadn't dared hope for. "Come on, baby," she said softly to Lily, helping her daughter slide out of the booth. "Let's get some sleep." In the cramped motel bathroom, steam curled through the air as Mariah helped Lily rinse the shampoo from her hair. The little girl giggled as water trickled down her face, a sound Mariah hadn't heard in weeks. The bathroom might have been dated, with its peeling wallpaper and worn tiles, but it was clean and warm, a luxury they hadn't known in far too long. "Mommy, the angel man was so nice," Lily said, splashing her hands in the bathwater. "His eyes looked sad, though, like yours sometimes." Mariah's hands paused mid-rinse. "He's not an angel, sweetheart, he's just." She struggled to find the right words. "He's just someone who wanted to help. But he gave us food, and this nice room." Lily held up her pruned fingers. "And hot water." A lump formed in Mariah's throat. Such simple things shouldn't feel like miracles, but they did. She helped Lily out of the tub, wrapping her in a scratchy but clean motel towel. The little girl's ribs weren't quite as visible as they had been a few months ago, but still, the sight made Mariah's heart ache. In the main room, Mariah dressed Lily in her worn nightgown, the only one she owned, and tucked her into the twin bed furthest from the door. The sheets smelled of cheap detergent, but they were fresh and crisp. Lily snuggled down, her damp hair forming a dark halo on the white pillowcase. "Mommy?" Lily's voice was already heavy with sleep. "Will we see the angel man again?" Mariah sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers through her daughter's hair. "I don't know, baby. But we're okay for tonight, and that's what matters." "I hope we do," Lily mumbled, her eyes drifting shut. "He made you smile." Those words followed Mariah as she settled into the room's threadbare armchair, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. The stranger, Ethan Walker, he'd said his name was, had paid for 3 nights at the motel. The key card sat on the scratched bedside table, a beacon of temporary safety. But could she trust him? Men in expensive suits didn't usually stop to help women like her. There had to be a catch, didn't there? She'd learned the hard way that kindness often came with strings attached. Yet something in his eyes had seemed genuine, lost, almost. Across town, in a penthouse apartment, 50 stories above the city, Ethan Walker sat in his leather office chair, tie loosened, jacket discarded. The lights of the city sparkled beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, but his attention was fixed on the silver-framed photograph in his hands. Sarah's smile beamed up at him, frozen in time, her dark hair wild in the wind, her arms thrown wide on their wedding day. She'd been so full of life then, so far removed from the girl who'd once gone hungry on these same city streets. "I couldn't save you," he whispered to the photograph, his thumb tracing the edge of the frame. "But maybe I can save them." The words felt heavy in the quiet room, weighted with years of guilt and regret. Sarah had never fully escaped the shadows of her childhood poverty. Even surrounded by luxury, she'd wake from nightmares of empty cupboards and cold nights. The depression had crept in slowly, fed by memories she couldn't shake. By the time Ethan realized how deep it ran, it was too late. He set the photograph back on his desk, next to acquisition reports and charity gala invitations. The little girl's voice echoed in his mind. "Mommy, I'm so hungry." The same words Sarah had once spoken to her own mother, according to the journal he'd found after her death. In the motel room, Mariah watched Lily sleep, counting her daughter's steady breaths. The neon sign from the motel cast alternating red and blue shadows across the worn carpet. A car passed outside, its headlights sweeping across the wall, and Mariah tensed until it moved on. She pulled her worn jacket tighter around her shoulders. The room was warm enough, but she couldn't shake the chill of uncertainty. Tomorrow, she'd have to figure out their next steps. The eviction notice would still be taped to their apartment door. The stack of unpaid bills wouldn't have disappeared. 3 nights in a motel wouldn't solve their problems. But for now, Her daughter was fed and warm and safe. Maybe that was enough for one night. In his penthouse, Ethan moved from his office to his bedroom. The California king bed with its Egyptian cotton sheets felt too large, too empty. He'd never refurnished after Sarah's death, leaving her side untouched, her reading glasses still on the nightstand. He lay down, still in his dress shirt and slacks, staring at the ceiling. The mother's face, Mariah's face, kept appearing in his mind. The same pride he'd seen in Sarah, the same determination to survive. But there had been something else, too. A fierce love for her daughter that burned through her exhaustion and fear. Sleep came slowly to both of them that night. Mariah dozed fitfully in the armchair, starting awake at every sound from the parking lot, one eye always on Lily's sleeping form. Her dreams, when they came, were a confused jumble of kind strangers and empty promises, of hope warring with experience. Ethan's dreams were filled with Sarah's voice, with memories of the day he'd found her. The pills scattered across their bathroom floor, the note that said simply, "The darkness never really goes away." He woke several times, reaching automatically for her side of the bed, finding only cold sheets. The night stretched on, holding them both in its grip, Mariah clinging to fear and hope in equal measure, Ethan haunted by the ghosts of his past. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city streets clean, while inside, two souls grappled with the weight of their circumstances and the unexpected intersection of their lives. Morning sunlight crept through the thin motel curtains, casting pale streaks across the worn carpet. Mariah sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers absently smoothing the wrinkles from her daughter's borrowed blanket. The events of last night felt like a dream. The kind stranger, the warm meal, this temporary shelter. But morning always brought reality back into sharp focus. "Time to get up, sweetheart," Mariah whispered, gently shaking Lily's shoulder. The little girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open with a sleepy smile that made Mariah's heart ache. "5 more minutes, Mommy?" Lily mumbled, snuggling deeper into the scratchy motel sheets. "The bed isn't lumpy like our old one." Mariah swallowed hard, gathering their few belongings into her tattered backpack. "We need to get going, baby. Mr. Walker was very kind, but we can't expect more." As if reading her thoughts, Lily sat up, her hair tousled from sleep. "Will we see the angel man again?" "No, honey." Mariah zipped the backpack with finality. "Rich people like him. They do their good deed and move on. That's just how things work." A knock at the door made them both jump. Mariah approached cautiously, her heart hammering. Through the peephole, she saw Ethan Walker himself, looking decidedly less formal than the previous night in a simple blue sweater and jeans. "Mr. Walker?" Mariah opened the door, confusion evident in her voice. "Good morning," he said, his expression warm but tentative. "I hope I'm not too early?" Lily bounced off the bed. "Angel man, you came back!" A ghost of a smile touched Ethan's lips. "I did, and I brought breakfast." He held up a paper bag that smelled of fresh pastries and coffee. "You didn't have to," Mariah started, but Ethan raised his hand. "Please, let's eat first. Then we need to talk." They sat at the small motel table, Lily happily munching on a chocolate croissant while Mariah picked nervously at a Danish. Ethan seemed lost in thought, turning a set of keys over in his hands. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Mrs. Carter, just Mariah, please. Mariah." He placed the keys on the table between them. "I have a proposition for you." She stiffened. "Mr. Walker, while I appreciate your kindness, I'm not looking for—" "It's not charity," he interrupted gently. "It's something I need to do." From his jacket, he withdrew an envelope and slid it across the table. With trembling fingers, Mariah opened it. Inside was a deed and several photographs of a beautiful 2-story house with a wraparound porch and a garden. Her eyes widened as she read the address. It was in one of the city's safest neighborhoods. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Every child deserves a home," Ethan said simply, watching Lily lick chocolate from her fingers. "A real home, safe, warm, with a yard to play in and good schools nearby." Mariah shook her head, pushing the envelope back. This is too much. I can't possibly. You can, Ethan insisted, his voice carrying an edge of something raw and painful. The house is yours. No strings attached. No rent. No mortgage. Just let me do this. But why? Mariah's voice cracked. You don't know us. Ethan's gaze drifted to the window, his expression distant. Because someone once needed this kind of help, and I was too late. He turned back to her, his eyes intense. Don't refuse out of pride, Mariah. Do it for Lily. At the sound of her name, Lily looked up. What's happening, Mommy? Mariah stared at the keys, her vision blurring. Mr. Walker Island. He's offering us a house, baby. A real house? Lily's eyes grew wide. With my own room? 4 bedrooms, actually, Ethan said, his expression softening as he watched the child's excitement. And a backyard with a swing set. Please, Mommy? Lily clasped her hands together. Can we see it? Mariah looked between her daughter's hopeful face and Ethan's earnest one. Everything in her wanted to refuse. Her pride, her independence, her fear of owing someone so much. But Lily's voice from last night echoed in her head. I'm so hungry. How many more nights could she bear hearing that? Okay, she whispered, then cleared her throat. Okay, we can at least look at it. 20 minutes later, they were in Ethan's car, heading across town. Lily bounced in her booster seat, pointing out every dog and flower they passed. In the passenger seat, Mariah clutched the deed, still struggling to process the morning's events. It's just around this corner, Ethan said, turning onto a tree-lined street. Mariah watched the houses grow larger and more elegant, their lawns perfectly manicured. She felt increasingly out of place in her worn clothes. Look, Mommy. Lily pressed her face against the window. Those houses look like castles. Ethan chuckled. Just wait until you see yours. The word yours made Mariah's stomach flip. She couldn't quite believe this was real, that this man, this stranger, was giving them a home. Part of her waited for the catch, the hidden agenda, but when she looked at Ethan's profile, all she saw was quiet determination. The car slowed in front of a beautiful white house with blue shutters. Flower beds lined the curved walkway, and a wooden swing hung from a sturdy oak tree in the front yard. It was exactly like the photos, but somehow even more magnificent in person. Is that it? Lily whispered in awe. Is that our castle? Mariah couldn't speak. She just stared at what would apparently be their new home, her heart thundering in her chest. The morning sun caught the windows, making them sparkle like diamonds, and somewhere in the distance, birds were singing. It was like a scene from every dream she'd ever had about giving Lily a better life. The black luxury car purred to a stop in front of a 2-story brick mansion. Lily pressed her small face against the window, her eyes wide with wonder. A wrought iron gate opened onto a circular driveway, surrounded by flowering gardens bursting with color. Is this really it? Mariah whispered, her hands trembling in her lap. Before Ethan could answer, Lily had already unbuckled her seatbelt and bounced out of the car. Her worn sneakers hit the pristine concrete, and she took off running toward the garden. Lily, wait! Mariah called out, but her daughter was already spinning in circles on the manicured lawn, her arms spread wide. Mommy, look at the flowers. They're like a rainbow. Lily's laughter echoed across the yard as she darted between rose bushes and perfectly trimmed hedges. She stopped to smell a bright yellow daffodil, then skipped toward a small stone fountain bubbling in the center of the garden. Ethan stepped out of the car and opened Mariah's door. She remained seated, frozen in disbelief. The house before her was something out of a dream, red brick walls covered in ivy, large windows that gleamed in the morning sun, and a grand wooden door with stained glass panels. Would you like to see inside? Ethan asked softly, extending his hand. Mariah ignored his offered help and stood on her own, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Mr. Walker, this island? This is too much. I don't understand why you're doing this. Ethan's expression shifted, a shadow crossing his face. He watched Lily chase a butterfly near a cluster of purple irises. Please, call me Ethan. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. And I have my reasons. They walked toward the house, following the stone path while keeping an eye on Lily's explorations. When they reached the front door, Ethan handed Mariah the key. Her fingers closed around the cool metal, but she didn't move to unlock it. "What reasons?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nobody just gives away houses to strangers. What do you want from us?" Ethan turned away, his shoulders tense. For a long moment, he stared at the garden where Lily was now examining a bed of bright pink peonies. "My wife, Claire," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "She grew up like Lily, hungry, moving from place to place, never knowing if there would be food on the table or a roof over her head." Mariah's grip on the key tightened. "What happened to her?" Ethan swallowed hard. "She never really escaped the poverty of her childhood. Not in here." He tapped his temple. "The fear, the shame, it haunted her. Even after we married, even after all the success, she couldn't shake it. Depression took her from me 3 years ago." Understanding dawned on Mariah's face, followed quickly by a flash of anger. "So we're what, your charity case? Your way of making up for not saving her?" "No," Ethan said firmly, meeting her eyes. "You're not a charity case. You're a mother fighting to give her child a better life, just like Claire's mother tried to do for her." He gestured to the house. "This isn't about pity. It's about giving Lily a chance that Claire never had. It's about breaking the cycle." Lily's voice carried across the garden. "Mommy, can we go inside? Please, please, please." Mariah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then back at the key in her hand. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "Give Lily the childhood she deserves. That's all I ask." With trembling fingers, Mariah inserted the key into the lock. The door swung open silently, revealing a bright foyer with gleaming hardwood floors and a curved staircase. "Wow!" Lily rushed past them, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. She ran from room to room, her excited gasps and exclamations floating back to them. "Mommy, there's a window seat, and look at this kitchen!" Mariah followed her daughter's voice to a spacious kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. Lily was opening and closing cabinet doors, peering inside each one with delight. "The refrigerator and pantry have been stocked," Ethan said from the doorway. "There's furniture being delivered tomorrow, but I thought you might like to choose some things yourself. The bedrooms upstairs are ready, though. Beds, dressers, everything you need for tonight." Mariah ran her hand along the smooth countertop, remembering her dreams of cooking in a kitchen like this. Before life had gotten so hard, before every meal became a struggle just to fill their stomachs. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Everyone deserves a chance," Ethan replied. He placed a folder on the counter. "The deed is in your name. There's also information about the neighborhood, local schools for Lily, and some other papers you'll need. Take your time looking through everything." Later that evening, after Ethan had left them to settle in, Mariah stood at the stove in their new kitchen. The smell of cooking pasta and sauce filled the air, simple ingredients she'd found in the well-stocked pantry. Lily sat at the kitchen island, swinging her legs as she watched her mother cook. "Mommy, are we really going to live here forever?" Lily asked, hugging her stuffed rabbit close. Mariah stirred the sauce, fighting back tears. "Yes, baby. This is our home now, and we don't have to be hungry anymore?" The wooden spoon trembled in Mariah's hand. "No, sweetheart. We don't have to be hungry anymore." When the pasta was ready, they carried their plates to the formal dining room. Crystal chandelier light sparkled off the dark wood table as they sat down to eat. Lily twirled her spaghetti with enthusiasm, sauce dotting her chin. Mariah took a bite of her own meal, savoring the simple pleasure of hot food in her stomach and the knowledge that there would be more tomorrow. She looked around at the elegant room, at her daughter's happy face, and felt something she hadn't dared to feel in months. Hope. Real, tangible hope, as warm and filling as the meal before them. Morning sunlight painted golden streaks across the mansion's brick facade as Mariah stood at the kitchen window, clutching a cup of coffee. The aroma of fresh-brewed coffee couldn't mask her unease as she watched people gathering on the sidewalk outside. Some walked their dogs deliberately slowly, while others didn't even try to hide their staring. "Mommy, why are those people looking at our house?" Lily asked, her small fingers pressed against the window pane, leaving smudgy prints on the spotless glass. "They're just curious, sweetie," Mariah replied, though her stomach twisted with anxiety. She watched as Mrs. Peterson from 2 doors down, she'd learned the name from the mailbox, stopped to talk with another woman. Their heads bent together in conspiratorial whispers, occasionally glancing toward the house. The doorbell rang, making Mariah jump. She smoothed her second-hand dress and took a deep breath before opening the door. A woman with perfectly styled blonde hair stood there, holding a covered dish, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Barbara Henderson, head of the Neighborhood Association." She thrust the dish forward. "I brought you a casserole." "Thank you, that's very kind," Mariah said, accepting the dish. "I'm Mariah Carter, and this is my daughter Lily." Lily peeked around her mother's legs, giving a shy wave. Barbara's eyes swept over their clothes, lingering on the worn spots of Mariah's dress. "So, how do you know Ethan Walker?" The question hung in the air like heavy perfume. Mariah's cheeks burned. "He's helping us get back on our feet." "Oh, I'm sure he is," Barbara said with a knowing look that made Mariah's skin crawl. "Well, enjoy the casserole." She turned and walked down the path, her heels clicking against the stone. Throughout the morning, more neighbors arrived with welcome gifts and thinly veiled curiosity. Each time, Mariah felt their judgmental stares, heard their loaded questions. By afternoon, she could see small groups gathered on the corner, their whispers carrying across perfectly manicured lawns. "Did you hear? She just showed up yesterday? A single mother? In this neighborhood?" Walker must have lost his mind, or found himself a pretty young thing. The words stung like paper cuts, small but sharp. Mariah pulled the curtains closed, trying to shut out the scrutiny, but she couldn't escape the feeling of being under a microscope. Her phone buzzed. Ethan's name appeared on the screen. "How are you settling in?" his deep voice asked. "Fine," she lied, then hesitated. "Actually, the neighbors. Are they giving you trouble?" "Not exactly. Just watching, whispering." There was a pause. "I'm sorry, Mariah. People can be cruel when they don't understand. Try not to let it bother you." Easy for him to say, she thought. He wasn't the one being labeled a gold digger or worse. Later that afternoon, a sleek car pulled up outside. Through a gap in the curtains, Mariah watched as 3 well-dressed people marched up to the front door. When she opened it, they introduced themselves as part of Ethan's PR team. "Miss Carter," the lead woman said, her tone clipped and professional. "We need to discuss the situation. Mr. Walker's generosity, while admirable, has created certain perceptions we need to address." Mariah felt like she was being interrogated as they peppered her with questions about her background, her relationship with Ethan, her plans for the future. They spoke about optics and public image, as if she were a problem to be managed. "Perhaps we could arrange a more suitable living situation," one suggested. "Something less conspicuous." "This is my home now," Mariah said firmly, though her voice shook slightly. "Mr. Walker gave it to us." They exchanged looks that made her feel small. After they left, Mariah sat on the grand staircase, her head in her hands. Lily found her there and climbed into her lap. "Are you sad, Mommy?" "No, baby, just thinking." She hugged her daughter close, drawing strength from her warmth. That evening, after tucking Lily into her new princess bed, Mariah paced the master bedroom. The space felt too big, too elegant for someone like her. Through the window she could still see lights on in neighboring houses, imagining more whispered conversations about the mysterious woman and child who'd appeared overnight in their exclusive community. Her phone lit up with a text from Ethan. "Don't worry about the PR team. This is your home now." But as Mariah lay in bed, sleep refused to come. The ceiling seemed to press down on her with the weight of expectations and judgment. She thought about Barbara's knowing smirk, the PR team's thinly veiled suggestions, the neighbors' whispers. Rolling onto her side, she stared at the moonlight streaming through the window. This beautiful house was meant to be a blessing, a fresh start. Instead, it felt like a spotlight, exposing every insecurity, every flaw, every reason she didn't belong here. "I have to prove them wrong," she whispered into the darkness. I won't be anyone's charity case or scandal. I'll find a way to stand on my own 2 feet." She turned away from the window, her jaw set with determination. The mansion might be Ethan's gift, but her dignity would be her own to reclaim. Tomorrow, she would start looking for work, for a way to support herself and Lily. She would show these people that she was more than their gossip, more than their assumptions. But for now, she lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the central air conditioning, a luxury she'd never known before, and wondered if she'd made a mistake accepting such an extravagant gift. The whispers would only grow louder, the scrutiny more intense. Yet when she thought of Lily's joy at having her own room, at finally having enough to eat, she knew she couldn't give up. The digital clock on the nightstand marked the slow passage of hours as Mariah's mind raced with plans and worries. She needed to be strong, for Lily, for herself, and to prove worthy of the faith Ethan had placed in her. But first, she had to figure out how to face another day under the neighborhood's microscope. The morning breeze rustled through the maple trees, lining the mansion's driveway as Ethan's car pulled up. Mariah watched from behind the living room curtains, her fingers nervously twisting the fabric. She hadn't expected him so early, especially not after yesterday's uncomfortable encounters with the neighbors. Lily bounded down the stairs in her pajamas, her tangled hair flying behind her. "Is that Uncle Ethan? Can I say hi?" "Hold on, sweetie. Let me talk to him first." Mariah smoothed her simple cotton dress and opened the front door before Ethan could ring the bell. He stood there in his usual crisp suit, but something about his expression seemed softer than usual. "Good morning, Mariah. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "No, we were just having breakfast." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Would you like to come in?" The kitchen still smelled of toast and coffee. Lily waved enthusiastically from her perch at the marble counter, mouth full of cereal. "Hi, Uncle Ethan." His face lit up at the nickname. "Good morning, Miss Lily." He turned to Mariah. "I actually came to discuss something important with your mother. Would that be okay?" Mariah's stomach tightened. More charity? More complications? But she gestured toward the dining room, where morning light streamed through tall windows. They sat across from each other at the massive oak table. "I have a proposition," Ethan began, placing his leather briefcase on the table. "My company runs a comprehensive career development program. 6 months of paid training in various fields, business, technology, culinary arts, whatever interests you." Mariah's first instinct was to refuse. She'd already accepted too much. But something in his steady gaze made her pause. "I know you're worried about the neighbors' talk," he continued. "This isn't charity, Mariah. It's an opportunity to build your own future on your own terms." She traced the wood grain on the table with her finger. "And what about Lily? There's an excellent private school just 10 minutes away. They have openings for the fall semester, and they offer after-school programs until 6. Everything was so perfectly arranged. Part of her wanted to be angry at his presumption, but she recognized the careful thought behind each detail. He wasn't just throwing money at them. He was offering tools for independence. "I'll think about it," she said finally, but they both knew she would accept. What choice did she have? Pride wouldn't put food on the table or secure Lily's future. 2 weeks later, Mariah found herself in a sleek classroom at the Walker Industries Training Center, learning about business fundamentals. To her surprise, she actually enjoyed it. Numbers had always made sense to her, and the instructor praised her quick grasp of concepts. Lily thrived at her new school, making friends and coming home with artwork for the refrigerator. Sometimes, when Mariah's classes ran late, Ethan would pick her up. He'd bring her back to the mansion, help with homework, and stay for dinner. Those evenings became a comfortable routine. Lily would chatter about her day while Mariah cooked, and Ethan would listen with genuine interest, asking questions about her friends and teachers. Sometimes he'd roll up his sleeves and help chop vegetables, looking amusingly out of place in his expensive suits. "You don't have to stay," Mariah told him one evening as she stirred a pot of pasta. "I'm sure you have more important things to do." He was teaching Lily how to fold paper airplanes at the kitchen counter. "Actually, this is the highlight of my day." The simple honesty in his voice made her pause. As weeks turned into months, Mariah noticed subtle changes. The tension in her shoulders began to ease. She stopped checking over her shoulder for judgment every time she left the house. The mansion started to feel like home, filled with Lily's laughter and the smell of home-cooked meals. One evening in late summer, after Lily had gone to bed, Mariah and Ethan sat on the back patio. Crickets chirped in the garden, and the air was heavy with the scent of blooming jasmine. "The program coordinator says I'm ready to start the advanced business courses," Mariah said, warming her hands around a mug of tea. "She thinks I have potential in financial planning." Ethan smiled. "I'm not surprised. You've always been smart with resources, even when you had almost nothing." The praise made her flush. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly. "Not just for the house or the program, but for," she gestured vaguely, searching for words, "for believing in us, for giving us dignity, along with help." He was silent for a moment, looking out at the darkened garden where Lily's swing set cast long shadows. "You don't need to thank me. Watching you both thrive, that's all the gratitude I need." Mariah studied his profile in the dim patio light. The hard lines of the businessman had softened over these months of shared dinners and homework sessions. She'd begun to see past the billion-dollar CEO to the man who folded paper airplanes and remembered how Lily liked her sandwiches cut. "Still," she said softly, "thank you." He turned to look at her, and something shifted in the space between them. The evening breeze carried the distant sound of traffic and the sweet scent of jasmine, while inside they could hear Lily's quiet footsteps as she snuck down for a glass of water. Their shared smile acknowledged what they both knew, that somehow imperceptibly they'd become more than benefactor and recipient. They'd become something like family. 3 weeks into the training program, Mariah stood at her workstation in the company's state-of-the-art culinary center, carefully plating a colorful Mediterranean salad. Her instructor, Chef Daniel, leaned over to inspect her work. "Excellent presentation, Mariah. Your knife skills have improved tremendously." He made a note on his clipboard. "And the vinaigrette?" Mariah drizzled the golden dressing in a perfect spiral. "House made with local olive oil, fresh herbs, and a touch of honey." Around her, other trainees worked at their own stations, but Mariah had quickly emerged as a standout in the hospitality program. Her natural talent for flavor combinations and eye for detail hadn't gone unnoticed. Each dish she created told a story, one of passion rekindled after years of settling for quick meals between shifts at dead-end jobs. During their afternoon break, Mariah sat in the student lounge, reviewing her notes when Ethan appeared in the doorway. He'd made it a habit to check on her progress, though she suspected it wasn't just about monitoring his investment. "I heard you impressed Chef Daniel today," he said, taking a seat across from her. Mariah tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "It feels good to cook again. Really cook, I mean. Not just heat up whatever's cheapest at the store." "Your passion shows." Ethan's usually stern expression softened. "The way you handle ingredients, it reminds me of watching artists at work." Mariah felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. She closed her notebook and took a deep breath. "Actually, I've been thinking about something." She hesitated, then continued. "Back before Lily, I always dreamed of running my own catering business. Small events, intimate gatherings where food could tell a story." Ethan leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on." "The training here, it's awakened something I thought I'd lost." Mariah's eyes lit up as she spoke. "I've been researching local catering services. There's a gap in the market for high-quality, personalized catering that's still affordable." "You've done your homework," Ethan observed, clearly impressed. "I have a business plan drafted." Mariah pulled out a well-worn folder. "I know it's ambitious, but—" "I'm in," Ethan interrupted. Mariah blinked. "What?" "I'll provide the seed money, whatever you need to get started." "No." Mariah's voice was firm. "Not as a gift. If we do this, it has to be a proper business loan, with interest and everything." Ethan studied her for a moment, respect evident in his expression. "Deal. We'll draw up the paperwork this week." Over the next few days, they worked together, refining her business plan. Ethan brought his business expertise, while Mariah contributed her culinary vision and practical experience. Their evening planning sessions often stretched late into the night, fueled by coffee and Mariah's test recipes. During one such session, Lily wandered down in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy? Uncle Ethan? Are you still working?" "We sure are, sweetheart," Mariah said, scooping her daughter into her lap. "Want to help us pick a name for Mommy's new business?" Lily's face lit up. "Can we call it Yummy Love?" Ethan chuckled, a rare sound that made both Mariah and Lily smile. "That's actually not bad. Food made with love is your mother's specialty." The days flew by, and soon it was time for Lily's birthday. Mariah insisted on doing all the cooking herself, turning it into a test run for her catering concept. She transformed the mansion's kitchen into a whirlwind of activity, preparing Lily's favorites with professional flair. The afternoon of the party, Lily twirled around the dining room in her new party dress, a gift from Uncle Ethan. Balloons bounced against the ceiling, and streamers draped elegantly across the windows. The table was set with Mariah's carefully crafted feast, mini quiches, colorful fruit arrangements, and a homemade birthday cake that looked like it belonged in a magazine. "Mommy, it's beautiful!" Lily exclaimed, her eyes wide at the spread. Ethan arrived carrying a large wrapped package. "Happy birthday, Lily," he said, setting it down carefully. "Can I open it now, please?" Lily bounced on her toes. Mariah nodded, and Lily tore into the wrapping paper to reveal an easel complete with art supplies. "Because every artist needs the right tools," Ethan explained, watching as Lily hugged the easel. As they gathered around the table, Mariah caught Ethan's eye. The man who had once been just a stranger in an expensive car was now something else entirely. A friend, a mentor, someone who believed in her dreams. The sound of Lily's laughter filled the room as she blew out her candles, making a wish she refused to share. They ate, talked, and celebrated well into the evening. Lily showed off her new art supplies, insisting on drawing portraits of both Mariah and Ethan. The pictures barely resembled them, but they proudly declared them masterpieces anyway. Watching Lily put the finishing touches on her drawings, Mariah realized something had shifted. This house, which had once felt like an overwhelming gesture of charity, had become a home. And these moments of shared joy weren't just gifts from a benefactor. They were memories being built together, one day at a time. "More cake, Uncle Ethan?" Lily asked, holding up a plate with a giant slice. "I shouldn't," he said, then grinned. "But it's not every day we celebrate such a special birthday." Mariah watched them, her heart full. The sound of their laughter echoed through the rooms that no longer felt too big or too grand, but just right for the life they were building. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the newly installed sign, "From the Heart Catering, where every meal tells a story." Mariah stood on the sidewalk, taking in the modest storefront she'd transformed into her business headquarters. The white-painted brick exterior gleamed fresh and clean, while the large display window showcased elegant place settings and sample menu cards. Inside, her small staff, 2 culinary program graduates she'd hired, bustled around the industrial kitchen, preparing for the grand opening. The aroma of freshly baked pastries and savory hors d'oeuvres filled the air. Stainless steel appliances sparkled, and organized shelves lined the walls, filled with professional-grade equipment purchased with Ethan's business loan. The table arrangements looked perfect, Mariah called out to Sarah, one of her new employees, who was adjusting the sample settings in the window. Each display told a different story. One elegant and formal, another rustic and homey, a third modern and minimalist. "Make sure the business cards are fully stocked by the door." Lily sat at a small desk in the corner, coloring a welcome sign for the entrance. She'd insisted on contributing to the grand opening, and Mariah couldn't deny her daughter's artistic touch added something special to the atmosphere. As the morning progressed, early visitors began trickling in, curious neighbors, local business owners, and community members who'd heard about the new catering service. Mariah greeted each one warmly, offering samples and explaining her vision for personalized catering that wouldn't break the bank. "These mushroom tartlets are divine," Mrs. Peterson from the local church exclaimed, reaching for another sample. "The Women's Auxiliary would love these for our next fundraiser." Mariah beamed, quickly jotting down Mrs. Peterson's contact information. "We offer special rates for community organizations," she explained, handing over a detailed menu packet. The bell above the door chimed softly, and Mariah looked up to see Ethan slip in quietly. He wore a simple dark suit today, deliberately understated, and positioned himself near the back of the room. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a subtle nod of encouragement. More people filed in as noon approached, the official start time for the grand opening celebration. Mariah's heart swelled as she recognized faces from the neighborhood. The librarian who'd always let Lily read past closing time, the grocery store owner who'd occasionally slipped extra items into their bag during harder times, and even some of her instructors from the culinary program. At precisely 12 o'clock, Mariah stepped to the front of the room, her hands trembling slightly as she held her prepared speech. The conversations quieted, and all eyes turned to her. Lily gave her a thumbs up from her corner desk. "Thank you all for coming today," Mariah began, her voice growing stronger with each word. "A year ago I couldn't have imagined standing here. I was a single mother, struggling to put food on the table, let alone dream about owning a business." She paused, her gaze finding Ethan in the crowd. He stood perfectly still, his usually stoic expression softening almost imperceptibly. But sometimes help comes from unexpected places. Sometimes one person's belief in you can change everything. Mariah's voice wavered slightly with emotion. "I'd like to thank Mr. Ethan Walker, who saw potential in me when I couldn't see it myself. His support, through a proper business loan," she added with a knowing smile, "made this dream possible." A murmur rippled through the crowd as people turned to look at Ethan. He shifted uncomfortably under the attention, but Mariah continued. "From the Heart Catering isn't just about food. It's about the stories we share over meals, the celebrations that bring us together, and the love that goes into every dish we prepare." She gestured to the kitchen behind her. "We're here to serve this community, to make your special moments even more memorable, whether it's a church fundraiser, a family reunion, or a business lunch." As she spoke, her staff began circulating with fresh trays of samples, miniature quiches, delicate pastry cups filled with seasoned chicken salad, and chocolate-dipped strawberries arranged like bouquets. "Every meal tells a story," Mariah concluded, "and we're honored to be part of yours. Thank you for letting us share in your celebrations." The crowd erupted in applause. As people surged forward to congratulate her and sample more food, Mariah caught a glimpse of Ethan's face. His eyes shimmered with unexpected emotion, and for a moment, the carefully maintained mask of the successful businessman fell away. He looked touched, truly touched, by her words. The afternoon passed in a blur of introductions, sampling, and booking inquiries. Mrs. Peterson signed a contract for the church fundraiser on the spot. The owner of a local tech startup discussed regular lunch deliveries for his team. Even the mayor's office requested information about catering an upcoming civic event. Throughout it all, Ethan remained in the background, observing quietly as Mariah worked the room with natural grace and professional confidence. She'd come so far from the desperate mother he'd met in the rain, yet she'd maintained the genuine warmth that had first moved him to help. As the crowd thinned and the sun began to set, Mariah found a moment to approach him. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "It meant a lot to have you here." Ethan nodded, his voice unusually gentle. "You've done all the hard work. I just provided the opportunity." "You provided more than that," Mariah insisted. "You provided hope when I needed it most." Before he could respond, Lily bounded over with her completed welcome sign, now decorated with colorful hearts and stars. "Look, Uncle Ethan, I made this for Mommy's store." Ethan knelt down to examine the artwork. "It's beautiful, Lily. Your mom's lucky to have such a talented assistant." The sign now hung proudly in the window, its childish scrawl and heartfelt decoration perfectly capturing the spirit of From the Heart Catering. As the last guests departed and Mariah's staff began cleaning up, Ethan took his leave. Walking to his car, he paused to look back at the storefront. Through the window, he could see Mariah and Lily sharing a celebratory hug, their joy palpable even from a distance. For the first time in years, his drive home wasn't accompanied by the usual weight of grief and regret. Instead, a genuine smile played at his lips. one that reached his eyes and warmed his heart. The bitterness that had been his constant companion since his wife's death felt lighter somehow, softened by the simple joy of watching someone else's dreams take flight. The evening sun cast long shadows through the windows of Mariah's catering shop. She wiped down the last counter while Lily sat at a corner table, coloring in her workbook. Ethan stood by the doorway, his usual confident posture slightly slumped. "You don't have to stay and help clean up," Mariah said, tossing the cloth into a bucket. "I want to." His voice was quieter than usual. He'd been different all day, more subdued, watching her work with distant eyes. Lily looked up from her coloring. "Uncle Ethan, are you sad?" The words caught him off guard. He blinked rapidly, and Mariah noticed the slight tremor in his hands. She'd never seen him like this before. "Come sit," Mariah said gently, pulling out a chair. "Lily, sweetie, why don't you go organize your crayons in the back room?" Lily gathered her things and skipped away, humming to herself. Once she was gone, Ethan sank into the chair, running a hand through his usually perfect hair. "Today would have been Sarah's birthday," he said finally. "My wife's." Mariah sat beside him, her heart aching at the pain in his voice. "Tell me about her." "She was." He struggled for words. "She grew up like you did, in a neighborhood where having enough food wasn't guaranteed, where every day was a fight to keep the lights on." His eyes grew distant. "When I met her, she was working 3 jobs to put herself through college. She was the strongest person I'd ever known." Mariah listened, seeing a new side of this man who had changed her life. "What happened?" "I thought I could fix everything with money." His voice cracked. "I gave her everything she'd never had, clothes, cars, vacations. But I couldn't fix the scars inside her. The shame she carried from her childhood, the memories of going to bed hungry." He pressed his palms against his eyes. "She fell into depression. Nothing I did helped. One day, I came home and found her." He couldn't finish, but Mariah understood. She reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were cold. "I failed her," he whispered. "All my money, all my connections, and I couldn't save her." "No," Mariah said firmly. "You loved her. Sometimes love isn't enough to heal someone's deepest wounds. But that doesn't mean you failed." Ethan looked at their joined hands. "When I heard Lily that night, crying about being hungry, it was like hearing Sarah's voice from the past. I couldn't walk away. Not again." "You're honoring her memory," Mariah said softly. "Every time you help someone, every act of kindness, that's Sarah's legacy living on through you." Tears spilled down his cheeks. Mariah had never seen him cry before. Without thinking, she stood and wrapped her arms around him. He stiffened for a moment, then melted into her embrace, his shoulders shaking. "Uncle Ethan?" Lily's small voice came from the doorway. She padded over and pressed herself against his side. "Don't cry, we love you." He gave a watery laugh, pulling back to wipe his eyes. "I love you too, sweetheart." He looked up at Mariah, something soft and vulnerable in his gaze. "Both of you." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken feelings. Mariah's heart fluttered as she realized how natural this felt. The 3 of them together, like a family. "How about we get some ice cream?" Ethan suggested, his voice steadier now. "It's what Sarah would have wanted on her birthday." "Yes," Lily bounced excitedly. "Can we get sprinkles?" "Extra sprinkles," Ethan promised, standing up. He looked at Mariah with a gentle smile. "Thank you. For listening. For understanding." She squeezed his hand one more time. "That's what family does." As they gathered their things to leave, Lily slipped her small hand into Ethan's. "Uncle Ethan, will you tell me stories about Aunt Sarah while we eat ice cream?" Ethan's breath caught, but his smile was genuine. "I'd love to, sweetheart." Mariah locked up the shop, her heart full as she watched Ethan lift Lily onto his shoulders. Outside, hidden in the growing dusk, a camera lens captured the tender moment, Ethan carrying Lily, Mariah walking close beside them, all 3 smiling as though they belonged together. The shutter clicked quietly, unnoticed by the trio, as they made their way down the street, their laughter echoing in the evening air. Mariah's phone buzzed non-stop early that morning. She ignored it at first, busy making Lily's lunch for school. But when her sister called for the third time, she finally picked up. "Have you seen the papers?" Her sister's worried voice crackled through the phone. "What papers?" Mariah balanced the phone on her shoulder while spreading peanut butter on bread. "Oh honey, you need to look online right now." Something in her sister's tone made Mariah's stomach twist. She set down the knife and opened her laptop. The headline hit her like a slap. "Billionaire's Secret Mistress: The Truth Behind Ethan Walker's Charity Case." Below it was a grainy photo of her, and Ethan talking outside her shop, his hand on her shoulder, in what the article called an intimate gesture. Her hands shook as she scrolled through more headlines. Gold Digger's Lucky Break. Walker's Wild Romance. Each one worse than the last. The morning news shows were already running with the story. "Mommy!" Lily stood in the doorway, backpack ready. "Why are you crying?" Mariah quickly wiped her eyes. "It's nothing, sweetie. Let's get you to school." But school wasn't any better. As they walked up to the entrance, parents whispered and stared. Lily's teacher gave Mariah a cold look. By lunchtime, the office called. Hoot, some older kids had been teasing Lily, calling her mom terrible names. Back at the catering shop, the phone rang constantly, but not with orders. One by one, clients called to cancel. The Hendersons' wedding reception, the Chamber of Commerce lunch, the church fundraiser, all gone. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Henderson said, not sounding sorry at all. "We just can't risk the attention." Mariah sat at her desk, surrounded by order forms now crossed out in red. The business she'd worked so hard to build was crumbling in a single morning. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Ethan. "Just saw the news, I'm so sorry. Board meeting now. We'll call soon." Across town at Walker Enterprises, Ethan faced his own storm. The boardroom was tense, faces grim around the long table. "This is reckless, even for you," Gerald Matthews, the head of the board, said. "First the mansion, now this scandal. The company's reputation—" "There is no scandal," Ethan cut in. "Mariah Carter is a hard-working single mother who you've given millions in assets to." Another board member slapped down a tabloid. "The media's having a field day. Our stock is already down 3 points." "I don't care about the stock," Ethan growled. "Well, you should," Gerald leaned forward. "Because this little charity project of yours is starting to look like a very expensive mistake." Ethan's phone buzzed. A message from his PR team. "Situation getting worse. Radio shows discussing Carter's situation. Should we release statement denying relationship?" He closed his eyes, remembering his late wife's words. "Sometimes helping others hurts more than doing nothing." He hadn't understood then. He did now. By afternoon, camera crews had found Mariah's shop. They pressed against the windows, shouting questions. She closed early, hurrying Lily through the back door to their car. "Why are those people taking pictures?" Lily asked, ducking her head. "Because people are mean sometimes, baby," Mariah said, her voice breaking. At home, more reporters waited. Mariah rushed Lily inside, closing all the curtains. But she couldn't shut out the truth. Her life was spinning out of control. Her phone rang again. "Ethan." "Mariah, please, let me fix this. I can call a press conference, explain everything." "Explain what?" Her voice cracked. "That you felt sorry for the poor single mom? That I'm your charity case? Your way of making up for not saving your wife?" "That's not. I was doing okay before," she cut him off. "It wasn't much, but it was mine. Now everyone thinks I'm... She couldn't even say it. "We know the truth," Ethan said softly. "The truth?" Mariah laughed bitterly. "The truth is, I let myself believe in fairy tales. That someone could just sweep in and make everything better. But look what your help has done. My business is ruined. My daughter is being bullied. Everyone thinks I'm your... Mariah, please. No." She took a deep breath, tears streaming down her face. "I want you to stay away from us. No more help, no more visits, no more anything. Don't do this." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, I have to protect my daughter, and myself." Mariah's hand trembled on the phone. Goodbye, Ethan. She hung up before he could respond. Through the curtains, camera flashes still flickered. Upstairs, she could hear Lily crying softly in her room. The beautiful house suddenly felt like a prison, every kindness now twisted into something ugly. Mariah slid down the wall to the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. She thought of all the moments, Ethan helping Lily with homework, bringing soup when they had colds, believing in her dreams when no one else did. Now those sweet memories were tainted, twisted by strangers into something scandalous and wrong. A small hand touched her shoulder. Lily stood there, holding her favorite stuffed bear. "Don't cry, Mommy," she whispered, wrapping her little arms around Mariah's neck. "We still have each other." Mariah held her daughter close, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair. Yes, they had each other. And maybe that would have to be enough. Sometimes the price of help was too high to pay. Outside, another camera flashed. 3 days passed like molasses, each hour dragging with the weight of whispers and stares. Mariah stood in her empty catering shop, wiping down spotless counters for the 3rd time that morning. No orders had come in. The phone hadn't rung once. The bell above the door chimed, making her heart leap, but it was only Lily, home from school. The 9-year-old's usual bounce was missing from her step. "Hi, sweetie," Mariah said, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. "How was school today?" Lily dropped her backpack on a nearby chair. "When is Uncle Ethan coming back?" The question hit Mariah like a physical blow. She turned away, pretending to organize already neat stacks of paper. "He's very busy right now, honey. But he always came before, even when he was busy." Lily's lower lip trembled. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby." Mariah rushed to hug her daughter. "You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups just need space. The kids at school say mean things." Lily buried her face in Mariah's apron. "They say we stole from him. That you're his." His. She couldn't finish the sentence. Mariah's throat tightened. "Those kids don't know what they're talking about. We didn't steal anything." But the words felt hollow. Every morning newspapers ran new stories. Gold digger, they called her. Opportunist. Some claimed she'd manipulated Ethan's grief over his late wife. Others suggested darker schemes. Across town, in his penthouse office, Ethan Walker stood at his window. From this height, the city looked peaceful, a lie he knew too well. His assistant had just delivered another stack of tabloids. He couldn't stop himself from reading them, torturing himself with each cruel headline about Mariah. "Sir?" His assistant knocked softly. "The board is requesting another emergency meeting." Ethan nodded without turning. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." His reflection showed dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept well since that night Mariah told him to stay away. Back at the shop, Mariah helped Lily with homework at one of the empty tables. The afternoon light cast long shadows through windows that should have displayed busy workers preparing catering orders. Instead, the kitchen stood silent. Her phone buzzed, another cancellation. This time, it was the Women's League annual dinner, her biggest remaining client. The message was polite but firm. They needed to distance themselves from recent controversies. "Mom?" Lily looked up from her math problems. "Can we still keep our house?" The question stabbed at Mariah's heart. "Of course we can, sweetie. I promise." But later that night, after tucking Lily into bed, Mariah sat alone at her kitchen table reviewing bills. Without the catering income, their savings would only last another month. The house payment loomed largest of all. Ethan's gift now felt like a weight around her neck. She thought of him often, though she tried not to. His kindness had been genuine. She knew that now. But the world wasn't ready for simple kindness between a billionaire and a struggling single mother. They'd twisted it into something ugly. Ethan, meanwhile, paced his study. Photos covered his desk, not the tabloid shots, but real moments he'd captured over the past months. Lily's birthday party. Mariah's proud smile at her shop's opening. Simple, precious memories now tainted by scandal. His late wife's photo watched him from the wall. "I tried to help them, Sarah," he whispered, "but I've only made things worse." The next morning brought more emptiness to Mariah's shop. She'd sent her staff home days ago, she couldn't afford to pay them. Now she stood alone, preparing simple sandwich platters for a church meeting. They hadn't canceled yet, though their order had shrunk considerably. A local news van drove by slowly, and Mariah ducked behind the counter. They'd been circling like vultures, hoping to catch her in some compromising moment. She'd stopped answering her phone entirely, unless she recognized the number. Lily called from school during lunch break, as she did every day now. "Tommy said his mom won't let him come to my birthday party next week." "We'll still have a wonderful party," Mariah promised, though she knew most of Lily's friends would probably stay away. "Just you and me, okay? And Uncle Ethan?" The hope in Lily's voice was unbearable. "No, sweetie. Not Uncle Ethan." After hanging up, Mariah allowed herself exactly 1 minute to cry. Then she wiped her eyes, straightened her apron, and went back to work. She had deliveries to make, even if they were smaller now. Across town, Ethan sat through another board meeting. His executives droned on about image management and damage control. Someone suggested a press release denouncing Mariah, distancing the company from the scandal. Ethan's hand crashed down on the conference table. "Absolutely not." The room fell silent. He stood, straightening his tie. Meeting adjourned. Later that evening, Mariah sat alone in her darkened shop. The last church sandwich had been delivered. Tomorrow's schedule was empty. She buried her face in her hands, allowing herself to feel the full weight of her situation. The bell above the door chimed softly. "We're closed," she called without looking up. No response came, but she heard footsteps leaving. When she finally raised her head, a small envelope lay on the counter. Inside was a child's drawing, Lily's unmistakable style. It showed 3 figures: a tall man in a suit, a woman in an apron, and a little girl between them, all holding hands. Written in crayon at the bottom, "I miss you, Uncle Ethan." Mariah's tears fell onto the paper. She knew Lily must have asked someone to deliver it, probably her teacher, who lived nearby. In his penthouse that same night, Ethan sat at his desk. His computer screen glowed with a half-written letter of resignation. His phone showed missed calls from board members, lawyers, and PR specialists. He ignored them all. Instead, he pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began to write. His pen moved with determination, mapping out a plan. The company, his reputation, the board's opinions, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was making things right. Outside his window, the city lights twinkled like stars. Somewhere out there, a little girl missed her Uncle Ethan. A proud woman's dreams were crumbling, and he had the power to fix it, if he was willing to risk everything. Ethan paced in his office, his normally pristine suit jacket draped over a chair. His tie hung loose around his neck, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Through the glass walls, he could see his executive team huddled in worried groups, shooting concerned glances his way. "Mr. Walker, please reconsider," his PR director, Nancy Chen, pleaded. She clutched a tablet to her chest, her knuckles white. "The board is right. This press conference could destroy everything you've built." Ethan stopped at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The same city where, somewhere, Mariah and Lily were suffering because of him. "Everything I've built?" He turned, his voice quiet but firm. "What good is any of it if I can't protect the people who matter?" His chief financial officer, James Morton, stepped forward. "Sir, the quarterly reports are due next week. Stepping down now, even temporarily, the shareholders will panic. The stock will plummet." "Then let it plummet." Ethan grabbed his jacket, shrugging it on with determined movements. "Schedule the press conference for 3 o'clock, main lobby." The executive team exchanged alarmed looks. Nancy's tablet clattered to the desk. "That's in 2 hours. We need time to prepare statements, control the narrative." "No more controlling the narrative." Ethan straightened his tie, his movements precise despite his exhaustion. "For once, I'm going to tell the truth. All of it." He sat at his desk, pulling out a piece of paper and a pen. His hand trembled slightly as he began to write. The words came slowly at first, then faster, pouring out like a confession. Outside his office, chaos erupted. Phones rang constantly. Assistants scurried between departments. The PR team assembled in the conference room, frantically preparing for damage control. An hour later, his secretary knocked softly. "Sir, the press is already gathering downstairs, and the board chairman is here." Harold Blackwood burst in without waiting for permission. The elderly man's face was flushed with anger. "Have you lost your mind, Ethan? 25 years I've mentored you, groomed you for this position. You're throwing it all away for some charity case?" Ethan carefully folded his handwritten speech, tucking it into his breast pocket. "Her name is Mariah Carter, and she's not a charity case, Harold. She's a reminder of everything we should be doing with our success." "The board will fight this," Harold warned. "We'll contest your temporary resignation, force a vote of no confidence if we have to." "You do what you have to do." Ethan stood, straightening his shoulders. "But first, I'm going to do what I should have done weeks ago." The elevator ride to the lobby felt endless. Ethan could feel the weight of his speech in his pocket, heavy with truths he'd never spoken aloud. His security team flanked him, their faces grim. The main lobby had been transformed. A podium stood before a sea of reporters, cameras, and microphones. The company logo gleamed on the wall behind it, a symbol of everything he'd built and everything he was willing to risk. Nancy intercepted him one last time, her eyes pleading. "We can still spin this. Say it was a charitable foundation initiative. Release a carefully worded statement instead." Ethan shook his head. "No more spin, Nancy. Sometimes the truth is all we have left." The room fell silent as he approached the podium. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. He could see his board members at the back of the room, their faces dark with disapproval. Taking a deep breath, Ethan pulled out his speech. The paper crinkled under his fingers as he smoothed it against the podium. His heart hammered, but his voice remained steady as he began. 10 years ago I lost my wife, Catherine." The room stilled at his words. This was not the corporate statement they'd expected. "She grew up in poverty, in circumstances not unlike those facing many in our city today. Despite all my resources, all my wealth, I couldn't save her from the despair that grew from those early years of hopelessness." Cameras clicked rapidly. Reporters leaned forward, sensing this was no ordinary press conference. 3 weeks ago, I heard a child cry out in hunger. That cry changed everything. Ethan's voice caught slightly. "I helped that child and her mother because it was right, not for publicity or profit. And now, watching them suffer under the weight of scandal and innuendo, I realize I failed them, just as I failed Catherine." He squared his shoulders, looking directly into the cameras. "Effective immediately, I am temporarily stepping down as CEO of Walker Industries. Not because of shame or scandal, but because I need to focus on fixing what my wealth and position have broken. Mariah Carter is not my mistress. She is a hard-working mother who deserved help, not harassment. Her only crime was accepting assistance from someone who should have known better how to protect her from the spotlight." The lobby erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Board members stormed toward the podium. But Ethan wasn't finished. "I am not asking for your understanding or approval. I am simply stating the truth. Sometimes the right thing and the profitable thing are not the same thing. And today, I choose what's right." Across town, in her quiet catering shop, Mariah absently wiped the same counter for the 4th time. The small TV mounted in the corner droned quietly, providing background noise to her loneliness. Suddenly, a breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Her hand froze mid-wipe as Ethan's face appeared. She watched, transfixed, as he stepped up to the podium in his company's lobby. The cleaning cloth slipped from her fingers as his words filled the empty shop. 3 weeks ago, I heard a child cry out in hunger." The grand conference room at Walker Industries buzzed with tension. Hundreds of reporters packed the space, their cameras creating a storm of flashes. The wooden podium stood empty at the front, the company's logo gleaming behind it. Ethan stepped onto the small stage, his footsteps echoing through the sudden hush. His usual commanding presence seemed different today, more human, more vulnerable. His blue tie was slightly crooked, and his hands trembled as he adjusted the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady despite his obvious exhaustion. "I'm here today to address the recent speculation about my relationship with Mariah Carter and her daughter Lily." Camera shutters clicked rapidly. Reporters leaned forward, hungry for scandal. Ethan took a deep breath, his fingers gripping the podium's edges. "But first, I need to tell you about Sarah." His voice softened. "My late wife." The room fell silent. Even the most hardened reporters stopped writing, caught off guard by the personal turn. "Sarah grew up in poverty," Ethan continued, pulling out an old photograph from his jacket pocket. "This was taken when she was 12, outside the homeless shelter where she lived with her mother." He held up the faded picture of a young girl with bright eyes and a worn coat. "She used to tell me about going to bed hungry, about wearing the same clothes for weeks, about watching her mother work 3 jobs just to keep them alive." Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "Sarah survived those years, but the memories haunted her. The shame, the helplessness, they never left her." He paused, taking a sip of water. The reporters waited, their usual impatience replaced by rapt attention. 2 years ago, I lost Sarah to depression. She had everything money could buy, but she couldn't shake the trauma of her childhood. His voice wavered. I was powerless to help her. The silence in the room grew heavier. A few photographers lowered their cameras, touched by his raw emotion. 3 months ago, I heard a child's voice in the rain. "Mommy, I'm so hungry." Those words. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Those words took me right back to Sarah's stories. I saw Lily Carter, clutching her mother's hand, looking exactly like Sarah in that old photograph. He straightened his shoulders, his voice growing stronger. "So yes, I helped them. I gave them a home. I offered Mariah Carter a chance at business training, not out of pity, and certainly not for the disgusting reasons some have suggested." Ethan's eyes flashed with controlled anger. "Mariah Carter is not my mistress. She is one of the most hard-working, dignified women I've ever met. A mother who would rather skip meals than see her daughter go hungry. A woman who insisted on treating my investment in her business as a loan, not a gift. She earned every bit of her success through determination and talent." The reporters began scribbling frantically. Ethan raised his voice slightly, commanding their attention. "I'm temporarily stepping down as CEO to prove this isn't about business or publicity. This is about doing what's right. About keeping a promise I made at Sarah's grave. To help others escape the poverty that contributed to her death." He pulled out another photo, this one recent, showing Lily smiling in her new school uniform. "This is why I helped. Because every child deserves a safe home. Every mother deserves a chance to provide for her family. And anyone who suggests otherwise should be ashamed." Ethan's voice softened again, but remained firm. "To those who've canceled contracts with Mariah's catering business, you're not punishing me. You're punishing a talented chef and a dedicated mother who's worked incredibly hard to build something from nothing. I urge you to judge her by her character and her work, not by gossip and lies." In the small living room of her mansion, Mariah sat frozen on her couch, watching the press conference on TV. Tears streamed down her face as she listened to Ethan defend her honor. Lily snuggled close, holding her mother's hand. "To Mariah and Lily," Ethan continued on screen, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry if my help brought you pain. But I'm not sorry for helping. I couldn't save Sarah, but I could help you. And I would do it again." Mariah pressed her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. On the screen, camera flashes exploded as Ethan held up both photos. Sarah and Lily, 2 little girls separated by time but united by circumstance. "I risked my company's reputation to do what's right," Ethan declared. "I'd risk it all again, because some things matter more than money or public opinion. Sometimes you hear a child cry in the rain, and you have to answer." Mariah hugged Lily close, her tears falling freely now. "He risked everything for us," she whispered, watching as Ethan stood tall against the barrage of questions from reporters. The morning sun painted golden streaks across Mariah's kitchen counter as she stared at her ringing phone in disbelief. Another order, her 5th since dawn. She grabbed a notepad, her hand shaking as she wrote down the details for a weekend wedding reception. "Yes, I can absolutely handle 50 guests," she said, trying to keep her voice professional despite her racing heart. "Thank you so much for choosing Carter's Catering." She'd barely set down the phone when it rang again, and again, and again. Outside her window, the neighborhood that had whispered cruel rumors just days ago now buzzed with different energy. Mrs. Henderson from next door knocked on her door, carrying a homemade apple pie. "We all watched the press conference, dear," she said, pulling Mariah into a warm hug. "That man told the whole world what we should have seen ourselves. You're a fighter, and we're proud to have you here." Lily bounced around the kitchen in her school uniform, her pigtails swinging. "Mommy, look." She pointed to their front yard, where neighbors had planted fresh flowers in a show of support. Some had left cards in the mailbox. Others had posted supportive messages on local community boards. The phone kept ringing throughout the morning. Church groups, local businesses, and families all wanted to book her services. Her calendar, empty just yesterday, now overflowed with appointments. A local news van parked outside, but this time they wanted to feature her cooking skills, not spread gossip. By afternoon, Mariah had to sit down, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. She picked up her tablet, reading through the flood of supportive comments online. People praised her determination, her dignity in the face of scandal, and most touchingly, her strength as a mother. A gentle knock at the door made her look up. Through the window, she saw Ethan standing there, looking less like the powerful CEO and more like a nervous friend. He held a small bouquet of daisies, Lily's favorites. "Uncle Ethan!" Lily screamed, running to the door before Mariah could move. She flung it open and launched herself into his arms, nearly knocking the flowers from his grasp. Ethan caught her with practiced ease, his tired face breaking into a genuine smile. "Hey, princess," he said softly, holding her close. Dark circles under his eyes showed the toll of recent days, but something lighter lived in his expression now. Mariah stood slowly, emotions churning in her chest. "Ethan, she began, but her voice cracked. He set Lily down gently, still holding the slightly crushed daisies. "These are for both of you," he said, extending them toward Mariah. Though they got a bit squished in the excitement. "I'm so sorry," Mariah burst out, taking the flowers with trembling hands. "I should never have doubted you. When the scandal broke, I got scared. I pushed you away when you were only trying to help." "No," Ethan shook his head firmly. "You were protecting yourself and Lily. You've had to be strong for so long, Mariah. Trust doesn't come easy when life has taught you to expect the worst." Lily tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Are you staying for dinner, Uncle Ethan? Mommy made her special lasagna, the one you said was better than your fancy restaurant food." A hint of color touched Mariah's cheeks. "I did make extra, if you'd like to stay." "I'd love to," Ethan replied, his voice warm. "But first, I need you both to know something." He knelt to be at Lily's eye level, including them both in his gaze. "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again. When you told me to stay away, it felt like losing family all over again." "We're your family?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with hope. "You became my family the moment I heard your voice in the rain," Ethan admitted. "Both of you, if you'll have me." Mariah moved to the kitchen, blinking back tears as she pulled the lasagna from the oven. The rich aroma filled the air as Lily dragged Ethan to the dining room, chattering about her day at school. Gone was the awkwardness of their early meals together, when Mariah had felt like a charity case and Ethan had seemed more benefactor than friend. They settled around the table, passing warm garlic bread and fresh salad. Lily giggled as Ethan praised the food with his usual enthusiasm, but now Mariah could accept his compliments without feeling small. They talked about her booming business, his temporary step back from CEO duties, and Lily's upcoming school play. "You know," Mariah said, watching Ethan help Lily cut her lasagna into manageable bites, "this feels different. Better." "How so?" Ethan asked, though his soft smile suggested he already knew. "Before I felt like I owed you everything, like I had to prove I deserved your help." She reached for her water glass, gathering her thoughts. "But now it feels like we're just us. No debts, no expectations, just family." "That's all I ever wanted," Ethan admitted quietly. "Not to be someone's savior or benefactor. Just to have what I lost, people who care about me for who I am, not what I can give them." Lily looked between them, marinara sauce dotting her chin. "Does this mean you'll come to my play next week? I'm playing a tree, but it's a very important tree." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Ethan promised, handing her a napkin. The evening light streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over their simple dinner. Outside, the neighborhood continued its usual rhythm, but inside this dining room, something profound had shifted. Three people who had once been strangers now shared the comfortable silence of family, bound not by obligation or gratitude, but by something far more precious, genuine love and trust. The kitchen buzzed with activity, as Mariah expertly directed her small team of servers. The church basement had been transformed into an elegant dining space for the annual fundraiser, with white tablecloths and twinkling lights strung across the ceiling. The aroma of perfectly seasoned chicken and roasted vegetables filled the air. "Table 3 needs more water," Mariah called out, checking her clipboard. She smiled, remembering how just weeks ago this kitchen had stood empty. Now, it was alive with purpose. Sarah, one of her new employees, hurried past with a stack of plates. "The principal from Lincoln Elementary just asked for your card. They want to book you for their Teacher's Appreciation Lunch next month." Mariah nodded, her heart swelling. The calendar on her phone was filled with bookings, church events, school functions, and corporate lunches. Even Ethan's company had hired her for their monthly board meetings, though she suspected he had nothing to do with that decision. The office manager had called directly, gushing about tasting her food at the community center's fundraiser. Through the kitchen door, she could see Lily sitting at a corner table, homework spread out before her. The little girl had grown used to spending afternoons at her mother's events, always finding a quiet spot to work while sneaking the occasional cookie from the dessert trays. "Mrs. Carter?" A volunteer from the church approached. "Everyone's raving about the food. The chicken is perfect." "Thank you," Mariah replied, her cheeks warming. The praise still felt new, still made her stomach flutter with pride and disbelief. The evening wound down smoothly. As her staff packed up the last of the equipment, Mariah heard familiar footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know it was Ethan. "I hear the fundraiser was a success," he said, his voice warm. Mariah wiped her hands on her apron. "More than double last year's donations," they said. She finally turned to face him, noting how his suit jacket was draped over one arm, his tie loosened. He must have come straight from the office. "Not surprising. Your food has that effect on people." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, something she'd begun to notice more and more lately. Lily looked up from her homework. "Uncle Ethan!" She bounded over, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Did you try the chocolate cake? Mom made it extra special." "I wouldn't dare miss it." He ruffled her hair gently. "In fact, I heard the church ladies fighting over the last piece." Mariah watched them together, her heart doing that strange flip it had started doing recently, whenever she saw them interact. Ethan had become such a natural part of their lives, showing up at events not as a benefactor checking on his investment, but as something else, something more. "Let me help you pack up," he offered, already rolling up his sleeves. "You don't have to," Mariah started. "I want to," he said simply. They worked side by side, loading containers into her catering van. The comfortable silence between them felt different now, charged with unspoken words and gentle glances. When their hands brushed, reaching for the same box, neither pulled away too quickly. Later, as Mariah locked up the van, Ethan cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice unusually hesitant. She turned to face him, noticing how the streetlight softened his usually sharp features. "About family." He paused, watching Lily skip circles around a nearby tree. "About how sometimes family isn't just what you're born into, but what you build together." Mariah's heart began to race. She gripped the van keys tighter. "These past months," he continued, "being around you and Lily, it's brought something back to life in me. Something I thought died with Claire." He mentioned his late wife's name without the usual shadow crossing his face. "I've watched you build this business from nothing. Watched you fight through the scandal and come out stronger. You never needed my help. You just needed a chance." "Ethan," Mariah whispered, but he held up a hand. Let me finish, please. He took a deep breath. I know how it started. Me trying to save someone because I couldn't save Claire. But it's different now. What I feel, what I hope we both feel. He met her eyes. I was wondering if you'd ever consider letting me truly be part of your family. Not as a benefactor or a friend, but as something more. The world seemed to still. Mariah could hear her heart pounding in her ears, could feel the weight of months of growing feelings pressing against her chest. Before she could form words, Lily bounded over. Mom, can Uncle Ethan come home with us? She tugged at his hand. Please? You promised to tell me about the time you built a treehouse when you were little, and it's not even a school night. Mariah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Ethan's patient, vulnerable expression. Everything had changed, yet somehow this moment felt inevitable, like they'd been walking toward it all along. Her eyes filled with tears as she smiled, watching Lily pull Ethan's hand and say, "Stay for bedtime stories." The evening sun painted the mansion's garden in warm, golden hues as Mariah spread a checkered blanket across the freshly cut grass. The sweet scent of blooming jasmine filled the air, carried by a gentle breeze that rustled through the nearby maple trees. Ethan helped her set out plates while Lily bounced around them, her pigtails swinging with each excited step. "Can I put the strawberries out, Mommy?" Lily asked, reaching for the bowl of bright red fruit. "Careful, sweetie," Mariah said, smiling as her daughter concentrated on arranging the berries just so. The sight of such simple abundance still amazed her sometimes, these peaceful moments so far removed from their desperate past. Ethan settled onto the blanket, his usual business suit replaced by casual jeans and a soft blue sweater. He looked younger somehow, the worried lines around his eyes softened in the evening light. "Remember the first night we met?" he asked, his voice gentle with memory. Mariah nodded, arranging sandwiches on a plate. "How could I forget? Standing in the rain, too proud to accept help at first." She shook her head at her former self. "I was so afraid. And now look at us," Ethan said, watching Lily chase a butterfly through the garden. "Your catering business is booming. The community center event last week was a huge success." "Thanks to you," Mariah started, but Ethan held up his hand. "No," he said firmly. "Thanks to your hard work and talent. I just opened a door, you walked through it on your own strength." Lily flopped down between them, grass stains on her knees and joy in her eyes. "Uncle Ethan, remember when you gave us this house? I thought it was a castle," she giggled, reaching for a strawberry. "It felt like one to me too," Mariah admitted, smoothing her daughter's wild hair. "I kept waiting to wake up and find it was all a dream." Ethan's expression grew thoughtful as he poured lemonade into paper cups. "Sarah, my late wife, she used to say that dreams aren't just fantasies. They're glimpses of what could be, if we're brave enough to reach for them." Mariah noticed how he spoke Sarah's name, without the usual shadow of pain crossing his face. "Tell us more about her," she encouraged softly. "She grew up like you did, Mariah. Never enough food, moving from place to place." Ethan's voice was steady now, filled with fondness rather than grief. But she had this incredible spirit. She believed in helping others, even when she had nothing herself. Lily scooted closer, always eager for stories. "Was she pretty? Beautiful?" Ethan smiled. "Inside and out. But you know what? She would have loved you both so much. Sometimes I think she led me to that street corner that night, made sure I heard your voice, Lily." "Like a guardian angel?" Lily asked, eyes wide. "Maybe so," Ethan replied, reaching out to touch the small cross necklace Lily wore, a gift from him on her last birthday. "I spent so long feeling guilty that I couldn't save her. But now I understand that helping others isn't about saving them. It's about walking beside them, supporting them as they save themselves." Mariah felt tears prick her eyes. "That's exactly what you did for us. You never made me feel like a charity case. You gave me the chance to build something of my own." The garden had grown dim as they talked, the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Suddenly, a tiny light blinked near Lily's nose, making her gasp with delight. "Fireflies!" she squealed, jumping up. More of the magical insects appeared, dancing through the evening air like living stars. Lily kicked off her shoes and ran through the grass, trying to catch them in her cupped hands. Her laughter echoed across the garden, pure and free. Mariah watched her daughter twirl and dance, remembering the hollow-eyed child who once whispered of hunger in the rain. "I used to be so ashamed," she admitted quietly to Ethan, "of being poor, of needing help, of not being able to give her enough. But now I see that shame was a prison I built myself." "And you broke free," Ethan said, his hand finding hers on the blanket. "We all did," Mariah replied, squeezing his fingers. "You from your guilt, me from my shame, Lily from want." She looked up at him, seeing the peace in his eyes that matched the contentment in her heart. "Sarah would be proud of you, you know, of the man you've become." Ethan's smile was tender as he watched Lily chase the fireflies. "I think she would be proud of all of us, of this family we've built together." The word family settled warm and right between them as they sat in comfortable silence. More fireflies rose from the grass, their gentle lights blessing the garden with magic. Lily's bare feet whispered through the grass as she danced, her face glowing with joy and wonder. "Look, Mommy! Uncle Ethan!" she called out, holding up her hands where a firefly blinked in her gentle grasp. "It's not afraid at all." "That's because it knows it's safe with you, sweetheart," Mariah answered, her heart full, as she watched her daughter no longer hungry, no longer afraid, but transformed by love and security into the carefree child she was always meant to be. The firefly flickered once more, before rising from Lily's hands to join its companions in their luminous dance through the twilight. Lily watched it go, then ran back to snuggle between Ethan and her mother on the blanket, grass-stained feet and all. Above them, the stars emerged one by one to shine down on their picnic, on their garden, on their home. The evening wrapped around them like a soft embrace, holding this moment of perfect contentment when the past shadows had finally given way to light. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows of the mansion, casting warm golden rays across the granite countertops. The sweet aroma of vanilla and butter filled the air as Mariah stood at the stove, her hair tied back in a loose bun, expertly flipping golden-brown pancakes. The sizzle of batter hitting the hot griddle created a comforting rhythm that echoed through the spacious kitchen. "A little to the left, Lily," Ethan guided, watching as the little girl carefully placed silverware beside each plate. She stuck her tongue out in concentration, determined to get it perfect. Her small hands adjusted the fork until it lined up just right. "Like this, Uncle Ethan?" Lily asked, beaming with pride when he nodded approval. "Perfect," he praised, carrying a pitcher of fresh orange juice to the table. The morning light caught the crystal glasses he'd set out, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the white tablecloth. Mariah glanced over her shoulder, taking in the scene. Her heart swelled at the sight of Ethan and Lily working together, their comfortable routine so natural now. She remembered the first morning they'd spent in this kitchen, when everything felt foreign and temporary. Now, every corner held memories. Lily's height marks penciled on the doorframe, the ceramic bowl they'd painted together sitting on the windowsill, the herb garden visible through the window that they'd planted as a family. "Something smells amazing," Ethan said, coming up beside her. He reached for the coffee pot, pouring them each a cup. The familiar gesture, knowing exactly how she liked her coffee, spoke volumes about their journey from strangers to family. "Chocolate chip pancakes," Mariah replied, sliding another perfectly golden disc onto the growing stack. "Lily's favorite." "Mine too," Ethan admitted with a playful wink, earning a giggle from Lily, who was now carefully folding napkins into triangles. Mariah carried the platter of pancakes to the table, where Lily had meticulously arranged everything. Sunlight spilled across the scene, illuminating the brass fixtures and making the syrup in its glass pitcher glow like amber. Fresh strawberries filled a blue bowl, the one Lily had picked out herself at the farmer's market last weekend. They settled into their seats, the chairs scraping softly against the hardwood floors. Ethan helped Lily with her pancakes while Mariah poured milk into her daughter's favorite cup, the one with dancing butterflies that Ethan had brought home one day, just because. "Remember when we first moved in?" Mariah asked softly, watching Lily drizzle syrup over her stack. "This kitchen felt so big." "Now it's just right," Lily declared, her mouth full of pancake. "Like in Goldilocks," Ethan chuckled, reaching for the butter. "It needed you both to make it feel that way. Before, it was just a room with fancy appliances. Mariah understood what he meant. When they'd first arrived, everything had felt like a museum piece, beautiful but untouchable. Now there were magnets holding artwork on the refrigerator, a collection of mismatched mugs in the cabinet, each with its own story, and the slight scratch on the counter where Lily had dropped a pan while learning to bake cookies. As they ate, morning light continued to fill the room, warming their faces. Lily chatted about her upcoming school play, while Ethan listened intently, asking questions that made her eyes light up with excitement. Mariah found herself watching them, struck by how normal it all felt, how right. This wasn't just a house anymore, gifted by a generous benefactor. The walls held their laughter, their tears, their stories. Every room had become part of their narrative, from the living room where they had movie nights to the study where Ethan helped Lily with her homework. Even the garden outside had transformed from a manicured landscape into their personal paradise, with Lily's swing set and Mariah's vegetable patches. "Can we have pancakes tomorrow too?" Lily asked, using her fork to chase the last bite around her plate. "We'll see," Mariah smiled, reaching out to wipe a spot of syrup from her daughter's chin. The simple gesture reminded her of countless mornings in their old apartment, trying to make a single piece of bread feel like enough. The memory didn't sting anymore, it was just part of their story, making the present even sweeter. Ethan gathered their empty plates, insisting on handling the cleanup since Mariah had cooked. As he loaded the dishwasher, Lily wandered to the window seat, her favorite spot for morning daydreaming. Mariah joined her, pulling her daughter close. They looked out at their garden, where spring flowers were beginning to bloom. The rose bushes they'd planted together were budding, promising summer color. Bird feeders hung from tree branches, another of Lily's projects, with Ethan drawing cardinals and blue jays that flashed like jewels against the green backdrop. Lily snuggled closer to Mariah, her small body warm and content. The morning sun wrapped around them like a gentle embrace, and in that moment, Mariah felt the full weight of their journey from that rainy night to this peaceful morning. "Mommy," Lily whispered, her voice soft but full of joy. "We're not hungry anymore." The simple truth in those words brought tears to Mariah's eyes. She felt Ethan's presence before she saw him, and then his hand was there, warm and steady as it found hers. Together, they gazed out at their garden, their slice of paradise, built not just from wealth, but from love, trust, and healing. The morning light painted everything in shades of hope, and Mariah squeezed Ethan's hand, feeling the certainty of belonging. They had found more than just food and shelter. Here they had found home. They had found family. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Mariah Carter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.